This is one-on-one session with the Forum IAS founder and director Ayush Sinha. In this session, students are asked questions to test their preparedness for the personality test. One-on-one sessions are not mock panel sessions.
All right, so let us begin with a couple of questions.
Sir.
Lovish, what is happening in Sri Lanka right now?
So there's a political and economic crisis happening in Sri Lanka right now. It has been fueled primarily by the low foreign exchange reserves and high inflation, after which there was anger against the government, post which the Prime Minister of the country, Mr. Rajapaksa, has resigned, and now the opposition has asked for a new government after the resignation of the incumbent president also.
What is the significance of Sri Lanka to our country?
So Sri Lanka has multiple interlinkages as well as interactions with India. Historically, Tamil population has been located in Sri Lanka. Apart from that, on a political front, Sri Lanka forms an important part of our neighborhood first policy as well as our Sagar initiative. From an economic perspective, sir, the Colombo port in Sri Lanka holds significance since a lot of transshipment of consignments coming to India first land at Colombo, after which they come to India. In the more recent times, sir, there have been security implications, especially after increasing footprint of China in Sri Lanka with overtaking of the Hambantota port, apart from other infrastructural projects.
What is the reason that China has been interested in the Indian Ocean?
So there are multiple reasons for China's interest in Indian Ocean. Primarily, the interest is economic in nature, since a large part of world trade passes through the sea lanes of communication in Indian Ocean, and having better control over the sea lanes of communication will ensure not only availability of raw material for China, but also access to markets across the globe. Second, sir, is the issue regarding Malacca Strait. Since a lot of China's trade passes through Malacca, China suffers from something called as Malacca dilemma and wants to diversify its sea lanes of communication and its transportation. Apart from that, sir, it also has security interest for China, since China wants to establish what has been informally called as the pearl of string policy, where it wants to have military bases across India covering all parts of the country. So recently we saw how China entered into a security agreement with Solomon Islands in furtherance of this.
How does the approach of India differ from the approach of China when it concerns Africa, according to you?
So I can think of 2 or 3 main ways in which the approach is different. First, China approaches finance through what has been called as a debt trap policy, where large infrastructure projects are created, often which may not be required by the state of that particular country, on cheap loans. But since the interest payment becomes difficult for the country, China will take over the territory or take over that particular project. An example of that is the Mombasa port in Kenya, which was developed by China, and due to default of the government may be taken over. India, on the other hand, has historically funded projects which are people supported and people driven. So it's not about imposition of their own ideology, but something which the government demands. Apart from that, sir, India's engagement has been more people to people and more on the cultural level, whereas China has been trying to impose its own culture. For example, we see Chinese language on all the railway projects which China has developed in Africa. So that is another difference which I see, sir.
Lavish, you are from Punjab. We are increasingly seeing that in politics there is a increasing culture of freebies.
Sir.
Don't you think that these freebies amount to voter bribery in some way?
Sir. No, sir, I don't think that freebies amount to voter bribery.
But don't you think it takes a fiscal drag on the state finance?
So certainly there is an argument that when freebies are provided undiscriminately, and especially when consumer services like electricity or consumer products, for example, laptops, Activas, are provided to all the sections of the society, they do have an impact on the fiscal capacity of the state. And therefore, an argument which has been made is that, in my opinion also, that freebies which are of the nature of essential services and fundamental rights, for example, health and education, they should be provided to everyone since they're also capacity building in nature. But other consumer services and products, they should be limited to only the most marginalized sections of the society so that there is no undue pressure which is put on the public exchequer.
Can we infer from these freebies culture that we are moving towards a universal basic scheme, given that certain units of free electricity is being given? All right. So that is something that is, if this were to be done, is it a move towards universal basic income?
So I don't think that it's a move towards universal basic income, because under universal basic income, firstly, so it's mostly cash transfers which are provided to all the individuals. However, as we often see in the cases of freebies or in poll promises, they are either directed towards a certain section of the society, or the transfers are more in the nature of services and products which the government has to offer. Secondly, sir, under universal basic income, the amount of money which is given is generally unattached, as in the beneficiary has complete control on howsoever they want to dispose that particular money. Whereas in the case of poll promises, for example, electricity, they're again generally tied to a particular service which the government is providing, sir. So maybe some forms of cash transfer, for example, something which the new government in Punjab has promised of giving ₹1,000 to all the women above the age of 18 years, that can be considered to some extent as universal basic income, but not all the poll promises and freebies, sir.
Is it pairing these freebies with basic income? Is it a better idea to switch to the cash transfer scheme or the basic income?
So it depends on the circumstances. While there can be certain benefits, for example, we have seen with freebies and other poll promises that they are not. There are certain leakages in terms of under coverage or over coverage. Apart from that, there are also leakages in distribution, so that can be covered with cash transfers. However, there's a problem with cash transfers is that they are not inflation indexed. For instance, today PDS can be granted of a certain amount despite whatever the market price of the grain is. The same will not happen with cash transfer. And apart from that, sir, since India is a patriarchal society, there's also an argument that in case cash transfers are made, the money can be used on other substances like drugs, alcohol, or may not go into the purpose for which the money is being provided, sir. So it has to be done keeping in mind the circumstances and the present conditions of that particular service which we want to offer.
Okay, so you said that there is a fear that the male members may monopolize the cash transfer. Can you give me just one or two arguments in favor of cash transfer?
Certainly, sir. So one argument is that it reduces the fiscal burden which the state has to outlay. For instance, if for PDS, our government spends almost rupees 1.5 lakh crores, which involves a lot of overhead expenditures in terms of storage of the grain, marketing of the grain, apart from other things. In case we give direct cash transfer, that will help in reducing the expenditure for the government, since a lot of overheads can be reduced. Secondly, sir, it also gives vital freedom to the beneficiary to select the kind of product and service which they want, sir. For instance, if a beneficiary does not want to consume wheat or paddy under PDS, but want to consume something like other millets, for example, it gives them greater freedom on what they want to consume.
Punjab has a drug problem. Haryana does not. What is the reason?
So there are multiple reasons behind it, historical as well as from the present context. Historically, sir, Punjab, since shares a long border of 550 kilometers with Pakistan, Punjab was earlier a transit route and later became a consumer of drugs. Haryana does not face the problem of a porous border with Pakistan, so the availability of drugs is relatively less. Second argument, sir, is also because Punjab faces huge unemployment. The unemployment rate, according to the periodic labor force survey in Punjab, is almost 9%. And even amongst the employed people, most of them are engaged in agrarian economy, where work is not across the seasons, and also agriculture income have been stagnating of late, sir. Haryana again has done well on indicators like industrialization and employment, so the demand for drugs is also less. Lastly, sir, Haryana has developed a very aggressive policy with regards to drug peddlers and drug smugglers, which Punjab unfortunately has not been that successful to curb. So that's why there's a higher demand for drugs in Punjab.
All right. You have a hobby in vexillology.
Sir,
What is vexillology?
sir, vexillology refers to the study of flags. It studies on how the flags are made, what goes into designing a flag, and what is the history of different flags of the world.
Lavish, which country's flag resembles most like the India's flag, according to you?
So, so the flag of Niger, which is a country in Western Africa, is very similar to India. It is a tricolor of orange, white, and green. And instead of the Ashok Chakra, they have an orange colored disc which represents the sun. Apart from that, the two other countries have a similar tricolor of orange, white, and green, which is Ireland, and the other country is Ivory Coast in Africa, sir.
Does it have any Indian linkage as to why they chose this color? Were they inspired by India, or was it just a natural outcome?
So, to the best of my knowledge, they do not have a linkage with India. The flag of Ireland per se was made before the Indian flag, and the orange and green over there represents the Protestants and the Catholic section of people, and white represents peace between them. The flag of Ivory Coast and Niger were in fact made together, and they represent geographical features. Uh, Orange representing the vegetation, white representing the rivers, and green representing the forest of the area.
Lavish, what is the Supreme Court's view with respect to marital rape, and what judgments have the Supreme Court given in this regard?
So, I am aware of one judgment which the Supreme Court had given in 2017, in which the court increased the age of marital rape from what is given in the IPC as 15 years to 18 years, to essentially say that any marital rape which happens against a wife who is below the age of 18 years will be considered as rape under the Indian Penal Code. However, the larger question on the constitutionality of the marital rape, sir, it has not been discussed in the Supreme Court yet.
All right. So Lavish, one last question. Which case do you think is in the history of independent India has had the maximum impact on citizens' rights?
Sir, I will say the Menka Gandhi case versus Union of India of 1978 that has had the biggest impact.
Sorry. And which case do you think has been the Supreme Court given the most revolutionary judgment much ahead of its time, according to you?
Sir, I will say the Keshanan Bharti case of the Supreme Court of 1973, where the court created a new doctrine of basic structure that I believe was unrequired for at least at that point of time.
Lavish, can you just tell me one case where you think that the Supreme Court judgment, in your opinion, given your opinion, has deviated from the path of justice?
So I can think of multiple judgments, but one judgment which comes to my mind is the NGAC case of 2015, in which the Supreme Court struck down the National Judicial Appointments Commission. So I think that not only vitiated against the previous jurisprudence, but also against what the Constituent Assembly makers had envisaged.
All right, Lavish, why do you want to join civil services?
So there are multiple reasons for it. The first prime reason is the diversity and the dynamic of job profile, where one gets to work in various fields. Second is the direct and the proximate connect with public welfare and public services, which a civil servant enjoys. And third, sir, it also allows me to use my knowledge and my training of law into application into the real world, sir. So all of these factors combined propels me towards civil services as a career.
All right, Lavish, your interview is over.
Thank you, sir.